Your support keeps these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. It all started with something so small, and in my mind so harmless that I never could have predicted the tidal wave of drama it would unleash. Honestly, if you'd asked me a month ago what the most ridiculous family argument I'd ever had was, I might have said something about who left the milk out or the time my sister and I almost came to blows over the thermostat. But now I have a story that takes the cake, or in this case, the turkey sandwich from the hospital cafeteria. It was a Tuesday afternoon and I was on my lunch break from work. My office isn't far from the hospital, maybe a 15-minute bike ride. I'd gone there once on a whim because I'd heard they had a surprisingly good salad bar and decent hot meals. And you know what? They did. The food was fresh, reasonably priced, and way healthier than most of the fast food joints nearby. The cafeteria was bright, clean, and usually quiet, a nice escape from the chaos of my office. So I started going there maybe once or twice a week. It wasn't a big deal. I never thought of it as anything strange. That day, I was enjoying a plate of roasted chicken, steamed vegetables, and some mashed potatoes when my phone rang. It was my sister. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered with my usual, "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was sharp from the get-go. "Where are you?" she demanded. "I'm having lunch," I said, "at the hospital cafeteria." There was a pause, just a beat of silence, but I could feel the judgment brewing. Then it came. "You're what? You're eating at the hospital cafeteria? Are you sick? Are you visiting someone?" "No," I said slowly, confused by her tone. "I just like the food, it's good and it's close by." That's when she went off. "That food is for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. Patients, their families, the staff, not random people looking for a cheap lunch. You can't just walk in there like it's some kind of public restaurant." I was stunned. Why not? I'm paying for my meal. I'm not taking food out of a patient's mouth. It's open to the public. They have a cash register for a reason. But she wasn't having it. She accused me of being inconsiderate, of making the place more crowded for people who really need to be there. She said it was weird, inappropriate, even kind of creepy to hang out at a hospital if you didn't have to be there. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was a cafeteria, not a private family dinner. The argument escalated quickly. I told her she was being ridiculous, that her logic didn't make sense, and that she was acting like I'd stolen medical supplies instead of eating a grilled cheese. She hung up on me. I thought that would be the end of it, just another sibling spat that would blow over in a few hours. Oh, how wrong I was. That evening, my phone started lighting up with calls from my parents. When I answered, my mother immediately said, "We've been talking to your sister and we agree with her. The hospital cafeteria is not a place you should be eating casually." My dad chimed in too, backing her up like they were a tag team. They both acted like I'd broken some unspoken moral law. I reminded them I don't live with them anymore, that I'm an adult and can eat where I please. That's when my dad sighed and said, "We're just trying to help you see how this looks to other people." My mom added, "Your sister has a point, you don't belong there unless you have a reason." I was floored. "So now you're policing where I eat lunch? Are you serious?" I said. "This is exactly why I moved out. You always take her side in everything, no matter how absurd." The conversation ended in frustration on both sides, but over the next few days they kept bringing it up. Random texts and phone calls, each time reminding me that I shouldn't be eating there. It was like they'd decided this was a hill worth dying on. By day 3 of their hounding, I'd had enough. I posted about it on Reddit just to get some outside perspective. And sure enough, the responses came flooding in, people telling me I wasn't doing anything wrong, that hospital cafeterias are open to the public, and that plenty of folks go there for lunch even without a medical reason. Some even shared stories of their own regular trips to hospital cafeterias, praising the food and the calm atmosphere. I screenshotted some of the responses and sent them to my sister and parents, thinking maybe it would help them see reason. It didn't. My sister doubled down, saying random strangers on the internet didn't know what they were talking about. My parents said they didn't care what Reddit thought, they were just trying to guide me. I figured if I ignored it long enough, the whole thing would fade away. But a few days later, my sister called me again out of the blue. "So," she said, "did you stop eating at the hospital yet?" "No," I replied. "Why would I?" That was all it took. The argument reignited instantly. She was even more furious this time, accusing me of disrespecting her and our parents by ignoring their wishes. Within hours, my parents were calling me too, voices raised, acting like I'd broken some family rule. I reminded them again that I don't live under their roof and that I'm not beholden to their opinions about my lunch choices. "This is exactly the kind of thing that makes me not want to be around you guys," I told them. You gang up on me over the smallest, pettiest things just because she decides to make an issue out of them." They huffed and puffed, but I hung up feeling oddly calm. I had no idea that what I thought was the peak of the drama was actually just the first ripple in a much bigger storm. Because my sister wasn't done, not by a long shot. And the next move she made would drag the rest of the family into it, turning a dumb argument about cafeteria food into something much uglier. I should have known my sister wouldn't let it go. When she digs her teeth into something, she's like a dog with a bone, except in this case, the bone was me eating at the hospital cafeteria. For most normal people, a disagreement like that would end with, "Well, I guess we see it differently," and moving on. Not her, she needed victory, and in her world, victory meant making everyone agree with her. A few days after our second fight, I started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Then my aunt texted me, "What's this I'm hearing about you hanging out at the hospital?" It took me a minute to figure out what she was talking about. Apparently, my sister had decided to gather allies by spreading her version of events to other relatives. From what I pieced together later, she'd called half the extended family, telling them I was treating the hospital like a personal diner, taking up space meant for sick people and grieving families, and making a spectacle of myself. She even implied I was there so often it was borderline creepy. She didn't stop with the older relatives either. She hit up cousins, some of whom I hadn't spoken to in months, to explain the situation and convince them to talk sense into me. It was textbook her, reframe the story until it sounds scandalous, then ride the wave of outrage she manufactured. The thing is, it didn't work this time. The first crack in her plan came from my uncle. He's the type who doesn't tolerate nonsense, old school, blunt, and allergic to favoritism. When he called me to get my side, I told him exactly what happened without adding any extra drama. He paused for a moment and then said, "You're kidding me, that's it, you go there to eat lunch." "Yup," I said. "And they're all up in arms about this." "Yup." "Well, that's stupid." Within an hour, he was on the phone with my parents. He chewed them out so hard I wish I'd been there in person. He accused them of always taking her side, called them out for raising a brat, and flat out said they were terrible parents for enabling her childish behavior. He told them they were making a mountain out of a molehill, embarrassing themselves, and treating me like the scapegoat again. The man didn't even give them room to defend themselves, he just steamrolled right over their excuses. Not long after that, one of my cousins who works nearby and commutes by bike reached out. He thought the whole situation was hilarious and suggested we meet for lunch at the very cafeteria that had started the war. We did, and he ended up loving it. He said the food was healthier than the greasy burger place he usually hit, and the prices were good enough that he planned to make it a weekly habit. We even ran into each other there again the following week, trays in hand, laughing about the fact that our mere presence in this building would probably send my sister into orbit. Sure enough, when she found out other people in the family were now eating there, she went ballistic. Apparently, it wasn't enough for her to stop me, now she had to stop anyone I influenced. That was the tipping point. With other family members openly mocking the whole situation, my parents started to feel the heat. It's one thing to blindly defend your favorite child, it's another when the rest of the family starts whispering about how ridiculous you're being. One evening, my mom called me sounding almost sheepish. She said they were sorry for making such a big deal out of it, and that they just wanted to defend my sister because they thought eating at a hospital cafeteria was weird. I didn't buy it for a second. I told them flat out, "You've been placating her for so long you don't even realize that's all you do anymore. She starts something, you back her up no matter how ridiculous, and the rest of us have to deal with it." They didn't argue. That alone told me they knew I was right. They promised to talk to her about it, and to my surprise, a few days later she called me to apologize. Now, if you've never had my sister apologize to you, let me explain. She can't do it without making it sound like she's chewing glass. Her voice gets tight, her words clipped, and she usually tries to rush through it as if speed makes it count less. This time was no different. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth as she forced the words out. Still, I accepted it partly because I wanted to put the whole thing behind us and partly because I didn't think it was worth holding onto. Big mistake. Because if there's one thing I've learned about my sister, it's that she doesn't forgive, she doesn't forget, and she always gets even. What I didn't know was that she was already plotting her revenge. And she'd pick her moment carefully, waiting for the perfect time to make her move. That perfect time would come at what I thought was going to be a peaceful family dinner. A week after the apology, my parents invited me over for dinner. They said it was part of making things right and getting the family back together. To be honest, I wasn't sure if I should go. It smelled a little too much like a PR move to save face with the rest of the family. Especially since they'd already told every aunt, uncle, and cousin about the invitation before I even accepted it. But they were cooking turkey, and I have a weakness for turkey drumsticks drowned in gravy. So yeah, I went. When I arrived, everything seemed normal enough. My mom was in the kitchen basting the bird, my dad was setting the table, and my sister was lounging on the couch scrolling through her phone. She gave me a bright, almost overly friendly smile that immediately made me suspicious. That smile only ever means she's hiding something. Dinner was admittedly amazing. Crispy skin, juicy meat, rich gravy, exactly the kind of meal that makes you forget for a moment that your family recently turned a cafeteria visit into World War III. My sister was unusually giggly throughout the meal, but I figured maybe she was just in a good mood. She even teased me about how I go full caveman with turkey drumsticks, which, for once, didn't bother me. We laughed, we ate, and for a little while I thought maybe we'd actually turned a corner. Then I went to leave. I walked out to the backyard where I'd parked my bike out of sight next to the fence. It wasn't there. At first I thought maybe my dad had moved it into the garage to keep it safe, but a quick check showed it was nowhere in sight. My chest tightened. That bike isn't just a casual ride, it's my main mode of transportation. I bought it used for $50, but it's in great condition and it gets me everywhere I need to go. Without it, I'm stranded. I walked back inside trying to stay calm. "Hey, did anyone move my bike?" I asked. My parents looked concerned right away. My sister, she was grinning. Not just a little smile, an I'm trying not to laugh out loud grin. That was all I needed to see. "I swear to God, if you touch my bike," I started. She cut me off with the classic fake innocence. "I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like that." I've known her long enough to recognize the tone. It's the same one she used when she did eat the last cookie, did tell our parents I skipped curfew, didn't spill juice on my laptop. It's the voice of a person who absolutely did it. "Fine," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'll just go ask the neighbors if I can check their security cameras, and then I'll call the cops." That's when the panic hit her face. It was quick, barely a flicker, but I caught it. She started protesting louder, saying I was being dramatic and overreacting. My parents immediately jumped in to scold me for accusing her without proof. I'd had enough. I headed for the door, phone in hand. "Okay then, let's get the proof." Behind me I heard her voice crack as she shouted, "Wait, fine, come back." The look on my parents' faces when she confessed was priceless. After spending the last 5 minutes defending her, they had to sit there while she admitted she'd arranged for two of her friends to grab my bike during dinner. She called it a prank and said it was because she was still mad about having to apologize over the cafeteria fight. Apparently, in her mind, bike theft is a reasonable response to a bruised ego. "They're just down the street with it," she said, like that somehow made it better. My parents started to tell me I could call the cops because she's your sister, but I was already dialing. That's when the begging started. She went from smug to sobbing in under 30 seconds, pleading with me to stop, promising she'd bring it back right away. Finally, my parents put their foot down, probably more out of fear of the neighbors hearing than out of actual principle. They told her to call her friends and have them bring my bike back immediately. She made the call, then ran into her room to whisper into the phone like she was plotting another scheme. I couldn't hear a word, but I could see the worry on my parents' faces. It took an hour for her friends to show up. When they did, my bike was soaked, caked in mud, and missing my water bottle. Their legs were wet and filthy up to the knees. The story came out quickly once I mentioned the neighbors' cameras and started recording. My sister had told them to dump my bike in a pond a few miles away. They'd gone to do exactly that until they found out they'd been caught. I made them repeat it in front of my parents, who turned on my sister like they should have from the start. She crumpled to the floor, kicking and pounding like a toddler throwing a tantrum. I hadn't seen her do that since she was actually a toddler, and frankly, it was embarrassing to witness in someone her age. By the end of the night, she was forced to wash and oil the bike under my dad's supervision while I dried out the headlight and checked for damage. She glared at me like I was the villain the whole time, but I couldn't care less. My parents, for once, seemed genuinely ashamed of her behavior. But this wasn't the end, not by a long shot. Because even after she was caught red-handed, she still had one last round of pettiness left in her. And it would spread far beyond just the four of us in that house. The day after the bike fiasco, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd feel some embarrassment, keep her head down, and let the whole thing fade. That's not how my sister operates. When she gets caught doing something wrong, her instinct isn't to apologize and move on, it's to rewrite the story so she's the victim. It started with my phone buzzing late that night. Unknown number after unknown number, all sending the same kind of message. How could you make your sister cry over a silly prank? You're so petty, it's just a bike. Wow, calling the cops on family, pathetic. I didn't even have to guess where they were coming from, this had my sister's fingerprints all over it. She'd clearly gone into damage control mode, rallying her friends and anyone who would listen with a version of events where I was the overreacting big brother who ruined her night over a harmless joke. I could have ignored it. I could have let them believe whatever she told them. But after everything, I was done playing the quiet scapegoat. So I replied to each and every one. Not short replies either, long, detailed texts explaining exactly what happened, step by step, right down to her friends' on-camera confessions about dumping my bike in a pond. I even included the detail about it being my main mode of transportation, not some toy. And I made sure to mention the neighbors' cameras and the recorded audio where her friends admitted the truth. A few didn't respond after that. A couple tried to backpedal with, "Oh, I didn't know the full story." And I'm pretty sure at least one forwarded my messages to other people, because within 48 hours the story started leaking outside her little circle. The real hit came when it reached her college. Now, I never went to college myself, but I know one universal truth: students who rely on bikes for transportation are fiercely protective of them. You mess with someone's bike, and you might as well be messing with their car. From what I heard later, it started with a joke in her friend group, something like, "Better not leave your bike around her if you ever make her apologize." That kind of thing spreads fast, and pretty soon she wasn't just the girl whose brother called her out, she was the girl who got caught trying to trash a bike over an argument about hospital food. She came home for the weekend in a full meltdown. Slamming doors, crying so loud you could hear her from the driveway, ranting about betrayal and humiliation. She stayed in her room for 3 days straight, refusing to go anywhere because everyone's talking about me. And of course, my parents eventually called me, trying to pivot the blame my way. They said things like, "You didn't need to tell so many people the whole story, and you could have just let it go to keep the peace." That's when I snapped. Keep the peace? She stole my bike, she told people to dump it in a pond, and now you want me to fix her reputation? No, she made the mess, she can live in it. I reminded them of our conversation after the dinner, when they'd finally admitted they'd been enabling her for years. I told them this was exactly why she was like this, because they always tried to shield her from consequences. This time they didn't fight me on it. They just sounded tired. Almost like they knew they'd lost control of her a long time ago, but were only now willing to admit it. For the next couple of weeks, I barely heard from her. When I did see her name pop up, it was only in group chats where she'd send a single emoji reply and then disappear. Her little clique stopped sending me angry texts too. It was almost as if the entire storm had just burned itself out. But I knew my sister. Silence didn't mean acceptance. Silence meant she was regrouping. And part of me wondered if she was sitting in her room, thinking up her next move. After the college gossip firestorm, things in my family went strangely quiet. Too quiet. It was the kind of silence that feels less like peace and more like everyone pretending they didn't just survive a hurricane. My parents stopped bringing up the hospital cafeteria entirely, as if the original argument never happened. My sister didn't text, didn't call, didn't even so much as accidentally comment on my social media like she sometimes does when she's bored. And when I did see her in person, rarely she acted like I was invisible. Not in the casual, we're busy kind of way, but in the icy, you don't exist in my world way. For most people, that would sting. For me, it was bliss. The first time we were in the same room again was about a month later, at a family gathering for our dad's birthday. She kept her distance, sticking close to a couple of cousins who'd clearly heard her side of things but weren't eager to get dragged into another drama cycle. Every so often I caught her glancing my way, not with the smugness she used to have, but with this nervous, calculating look. Like she was still trying to figure out how I'd managed to flip the script so completely. My parents, meanwhile, were laying it on thick. Offering me drinks. Asking about my job. Making sure I had extra dessert. Classic let's pretend nothing's wrong mode. It would have been almost funny if I didn't know exactly what they were doing, trying to smooth over months of chaos with a few slices of cake. Later that week, my mom called me under the guise of just checking in. 5 minutes into small talk, she slid in a soft, careful question. Do you think you and your sister could work things out? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. I just said, Mom, there's nothing to work out. I didn't do anything wrong. She did. And until she can admit that without being forced, I'm not interested in pretending everything's fine. There was a pause on her end, long enough that I could almost hear her thinking about arguing. But she didn't. She just sighed and said, all right, before changing the subject. That became my new standard with all of them. No more letting my sister's tantrums drag me into the role of the bad guy. No more just apologize to keep the peace. No more swallowing my side of the story to protect her from consequences. If she wants to sulk, fine. If she wants to avoid me, even better. And if she ever decides to pull another stunt like the bike incident, I've made it clear to her and to my parents that I won't hesitate to go straight to the police. Family or not. It's funny though. Since I drew that line, she's kept her distance. Her friends don't text me anymore. Her name barely comes up in conversation unless it's in passing. And I can't help but think it's because she finally figured out that the old game doesn't work on me anymore. That the dynamic she's thrived on since we were teenagers, her as the loud, spoiled one and me as the quiet, patient one, has officially ended. Now, when I head to the hospital cafeteria for lunch, I do it without looking over my shoulder. I don't care if she hears about it. I don't care if it annoys her. And if she decides to make it a problem again, well, she can take a number. For the first time in a long time, I'm not playing along. And honestly, that's the most peaceful meal I've ever had.